Here is the bathroom. It is dreadful. We just removed the old sink. It was that thing right there. And we're going to be putting in a new sink table, a vessel sink, replacing and updating the outlets, and repainting. And we're probably going to redo this ugly floor as well. First thing I did is made a pattern. We're going to put a catty corner sink top for a vessel sink. Here's the sink sitting on the pattern that I made. And you'll see here that I had to extend the pattern out a little bit because the sink was a little bit larger than I thought originally. So I adjusted my pattern. I added a cut piece to here. That's going to taper down in with the rest of it. So the taper is going to stay the same. I just had to widen the front base in order for the sink to fit securely to where it wasn't going to hang over the edge. I'm using the pre-cut corners from the factory, and I'm going to line it up, and we're going to make a straight line so that when I cut it, it'll be perfectly straight. I've removed the pattern. I used a straight edge. I did add about 1/4 of an inch to my measurements. When you cut with a saw, it can take up to 1/4 of an inch off of your actual finished measurement. We also have some sanding to do and things like that, so I didn't want to have it undersized. Here is my finished cut, just how I want it. I'm not concerned about the little rough edges because those are going to go away as soon as I sand it. All right. We've got the top sanded down. I like how it's turned out after it's sanded. I'm going to add some decals to the countertop before I put my stain or my clear coat on there. The decals are gears because we're going for an industrial look, and one of my gears just happens to be the exact same circumference as the top of the bowl. So we're going to place that gear strategically so it sits just beneath the bowl. So when you're looking down through the clear glass, you are going to be looking straight down at that gear and some others that we're going to add to the countertop as well. I've gone over the edges several times with my handy dandy little tool here. I'm going to peel up an edge. I'm going to see how it's sticking. And so far it looks pretty good. And notice I'm not peeling straight up. I'm peeling as flat as I can against the surface. If you peel it straight up, you kind of run the risk of pulling your stickers back up. So if you run it flat, it's not putting as much pressure on the stickers to go straight up with the backing because it is pretty sticky. Now we're going to add some more gears to make it look a little more industrial. Throw a couple different colors in there. I've got some really nice copper ones that we're going to be putting on the wood as well. Some pretty nice ones. So I'm going to be doing that for the next few minutes. I overlapped a few of them. I thought it looked better that way, as well as put the teeth together in some of them, you know, like working gears. It's just more fun, I think. That is what it looks like before the stain. Okay, so I'm all ready to do my staining. I am using Minwax wood finish. This is the Provincial 211. I really like this. It makes it look a little bit older. And an old brush because I'm just staining it, so I'm probably going to throw it away when I'm done. And of course my handy dandy work gloves that don't match. As you can see, the stain is done. It looks beautiful. I really like the way it turned out. I like how it's a little darker around the edges of the wood where the stain absorbed a little bit more. It really gives it that old wood look. So we're going to let this dry for a few hours, and then we're going to apply the clear glaze. So it's been a few hours, and what I've done is I've set up a work area. This stuff's very messy. It will drip. Make sure you put a good tarp on the bottom that doesn't have any holes in it because it will find the holes and get everywhere. I also made sure that this is sitting as level as I can possibly get it. To achieve the glaze look, we're going to use Parks Super Glaze. It's really cool stuff. I bought it at Home Depot. I think it was like $24 for this box. I think it'll be enough to do this project. I've used it several times before. Projects needed 5 or 6 boxes. The glaze has to be mixed in equal parts. So what I've done is I've saved some fast food cups over the past few weeks. Cut them and cleaned them out. These are perfect because they are the exact same size and it'll be easy to do equal parts. A lot of people like to go to the home improvement stores and get those quart cups. They're like $1.29 a piece. Those are great, but I do this really often and I just don't like to waste the money, and if I can recycle, why not? Okay, well, I've mixed my product. Make sure you follow the manufacturer's directions exactly. You can definitely undermix it, but you can't overmix it. So if you're questioning if you've mixed it enough, you can mix it some more just to be sure. Now we're going to start with the pouring and spreading process. The instructions call for a squeegee. I didn't have a regular squeegee, so I'm going to use my little squeegee that I was using on my decals to spread it into the cracks and all the crevices. I used about 1/3 of the product for the first coat. Before it starts to harden or set, it's kind of wavy and there's some bubbles in it. So I'm going to take a heat gun and lightly go over the surface with a heat gun to smooth it out. You're going to see some ripples in the first layer. That is where the wood is absorbing it in some places more than others. That's okay. Don't mess with it. As long as you got all the little bubbles out of it, it's fine. This layer is going to seal the wood so the second layer can sit on top of it. We've given it 24 hours to cure. And as you can see, it's very hard. There is some dust on here. We're going to clean that off with rubbing alcohol. Plus it will make it a lot easier for the second coat to adhere to the first coat. And because of the dust, I've made myself a dust tint. The second layer is very important to keep dust free because it's permanent and you will not be able to get the dust out. Okay, so first we're going to clean it off with some rubbing alcohol and then we're going to let it dry entirely. I went to Home Depot and I got another box of the glazing. It's always better to have more than enough. If you start it and you run out, you are in trouble because you have to do it start to finish, one layer at a time. There it is. Looks like glass. You'll see that the newer batch has more bubbles in it than the older batch. I had to mix a second batch, so I was right to get a second container of the glaze. Like I said, you always want to make sure you have enough on hand because after you do a first layer and you run out, you will not have a seamless glazing unless you have another batch ready to mix up right away. So what I'm going to do now is go over the surface with the heat gun and it's going to get rid of some of those bubbles. And we're going to let it sit for another 24 hours. I've got all the bubbles out for the most part. Hopefully the rest will work their way out. The instructions say that you can blow gently across the surface, but I would rather use a heat gun. And the point of the heat gun is not really the heat, it's just the air blowing across it that'll cause enough friction to cause the bubbles to rise to the surface and pop. You're going to lose a lot of product on the ground. It's okay. Do not try to collect it and reuse it. I've read where people have done that before and it did not turn out well and it ruined their whole project. So do not try to collect the drips and reuse them. It's been about 24 hours and as you can tell, it is like glass. Not one bump, not one ripple, not one bubble. Nice and hard all the way through. On the bottom there are these dry drip bubbles or whatever you want to call them. I'm going to take a sander to these and I'm going to sand it down smooth. It's not going to show, it's going on the underside, but I still want to sand them down so it's not visible that there were drips on here.